All right, everybody. How you doing? Hopefully having a great day. If you're not, maybe for a few moments I can give you a chance to get away from everything and just be at ease. Now, as you know, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. We're into the second round. We have pivotal game threes coming up. What makes them pivotal? Obviously, if the series is tied 1-1, then usually game three kind of sways it one way or the other for whichever team wins. We do have a series that is 2-0, so I'm going to talk about how the losing team can avoid going down 3-0. But I also want to talk about. I guess I'll start with this. If you didn't know, Coach Budenholzer was fired yesterday from his position with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think if you look at it from one end of the spectrum, I believe he's the franchise leader for win percentage out of all the coaches they've had. So in that instance, you probably think maybe he deserves a little more leeway because, yes, they had a disappointing season. 1 seed losing to the 8 seed Miami Heat in 5 games in the fashion that they did. But you could look at it and say, Giannis was, I guess, hobbled, you'd say, for like 2.5 games. Maybe you give Bud another year to prove himself. The other end, you could say, well, outside of the championship year, has Coach Bud really lived up to expectations in Milwaukee? I think that is a valid, assumption or question to have. Because when you look at it in terms of coaches in the East, like Spoelstra out-coached him. I could go as far to say, Udoka when he was with the Celtics, better coach. Nick Nurse, guys like that in the East, you could say are better coaches than Coach Bud. And from my experience with Budenholzer, both in Atlanta and Milwaukee, watching him, he doesn't seem like a really good coach in terms of adjustments over the course of a series. At times I question his X's and O's ability. So yes, he does have a championship, which is not easy in any stretch. But it seems like the more and more we look at it, the Bucks won that championship because of Giannis in spite of Budenholzer's ability. Now, once again, I've been on here for several episodes where I've talked NBA, and I've never been a Budenholzer fan. But I think it was time for Milwaukee to move on from him. You can definitely let me know in the comment section whether you believe so or not. Question is obviously going to be, what type of coach should they look for now that they've moved on from Budenholzer? To me, I feel like the consensus should be they should get somebody with a maybe new age offensive mind. For these past few years, when you play against Milwaukee, you know what you're getting. Giannis is going to control the action, and he's going to try to forcibly get to the hoop. That's how they're going to control most playoff series. Well, as we're starting to see, teams are kind of wising up to that. But Budenholzer doesn't have a counter to it, which is why, since the championship year, they haven't been able to get back. Now, it's not all on him, because you have to put some of this on Middleton, who's supposed to be the clear-cut number 2 guy, but he's been kind of underperforming for the past couple of years, whether it's injury, coming back from injury, for whatever reason, he just hasn't looked like the same guy the past few years. You could say Jrue Holiday, who's been really good regular seasons, kind of up and down when it comes to the playoffs. Brook Lopez. You can have questions about him being on the perimeter too much, not being in the action enough, whatever. Yeah, Bobby Portis. Like, you have players on that team to where they should be constant contenders year in and year out. And look, like I said, I'm looking past regular season performances. Yes, they're one or two most years, but playoffs is when it matters. And Budenholzer, to me, has come up short more often than not. So I feel like it's a good time to get away from him. I'm sure he'll latch on somewhere else. I don't know if he'll be a head coach necessarily right away. I could see him being like an assistant coach for a couple of years, then maybe getting back into the head coaching pool, but we never know. We'll have to see with the NBA. But yeah, I feel like they should go offensive guy who can make it easier on Giannis, especially in the playoffs. Because it always seems like Giannis has to go into Superman mode for them to even have a chance to beat better teams in the East. Then, as this year showed you, Giannis was hobbled a little bit. They couldn't hang with the 8th-seeded Miami Heat team. That on paper, you put the rosters together, up against each other. Miami's roster had no business hanging with and dominating Milwaukee's roster like they did. Miami had the advantage seemingly in each of these games down the stretch. That's where X's and O's and coach's ability really shines. Spoelstra just, performed a masterclass on Budenholzer. So that's what I want to start with. But now, let's get into these playoff matchups. So let's start with the Suns and the Nuggets. So what do the Suns need to do to avoid going down 3-0? Game 3 will be Friday night. I believe 9 or 10 o'clock. Now, looking at this series so far, what have we seen? Denver's depth and pace right now is too much for a shallow roster in Phoenix because of all they gave up to get KD. Now dealing with a CP3 issue of the groin injury. I believe for the most part he's supposed to miss like games 3 and 4 right now. Could miss more. So even though Chris Paul, he's the clear-cut 3, his main objective was getting the offense going, trying to create for Durant and Booker. With Chris Paul out, that puts more on Booker and Durant to kind of create for themselves. So the Suns are going to have to get somebody to replace Chris Paul, whether that's Cam Payne, if he can come in, play out of his mind for a couple of games, that would be beneficial. I think 2, I would like to see Monty Williams use TJ Warren and Terrence Ross. I don't understand what's going on in that situation. They brought those guys in. Why not use them when the biggest questions that people have of your team, depth? So I'm assuming Monty Williams looks at it as those 2 are maybe insurance for Durant and Booker, but you tell me you can't get 3 out of the 4 on the court at the same time? Should be possible. I don't know why they're not doing it. And then 3, I think Ayton's going to have to pick up the slack now with no Paul and what we've seen with Durant and Booker not doing enough to overcome everything Denver has, on the attack against them. So if the Phoenix Suns can figure out those 3 issues, I think they avoid going down 3-0. If not, this series looks like it's going to be a really quick one. Could be a sweep, could be 5 games. The way this is going right now, I don't see anything more than 5 games, which would be kind of disappointing considering all the hype the Suns received when they traded for Kevin Durant. Now, if you remember the episode I did where I predicted the playoffs, I myself bought in a little bit, saying the Suns are going to make the Western Conference Finals. I had the Suns actually coming out of the West, but that was kind of more with the Nuggets and the questions that they've had in terms of making it the second round. So I thought that's where this series could be at play. Now, I don't think the series is over yet, because if Phoenix wins game 3, they're down 2-1. Now the series doesn't look as hopeless as before. Now, if they go down 3-0, then yeah, because then you got to wonder, will guys on Phoenix start mailing it in, trying to get the season over with so they can get on vacation? But I'll be definitely paying attention to game 3 to see what happens there. And hopefully, because look, I don't like, if you get a sweep in the first one, that's fine. But once you get the second round, I'm expecting 6-7 game series. So I'm hoping Phoenix puts up some type of fight. But like I said, we will see. So now let's look at the other Western Conference series. The Lakers, for as impressive as they looked in game 1, the Warriors were as impressive, if not even more impressive, in game 2, tying the series up at 1-1. After game 1, everybody was like, the Warriors have a Anthony Davis problem. If you look at game 2, Anthony Davis had a subpar game, which is definitely one of the reasons why Anthony Davis is so infuriating at times, because we understand how dominating he could be because of his skill set against other big men, but he just doesn't do it consistently enough to warrant, the attention. Because if you're looking at Golden State, you look at the guys that they put on him. Draymond Green, you feel like Anthony Davis should dominate. Kevon Looney, Anthony Davis should be too athletic for. Did not show up in game 2. The Lakers got blown out. Now, the Lakers being the road team, from I guess looking outside, you're like, they went to Golden State, they split. Fine, they've done what they needed to do. I can agree with that. But the worry now is, because going into this series, I said Lakers are a really good interior defensive team. The Warriors will get their opportunities on the perimeter. Game 1, they kind of struggled making shots. Game 2, they didn't. So if the trend now continues of Golden State making their perimeter shots, the focus on AD is going to be much higher, because he's going to have to play up to a level to counteract that. And if he struggles again, we've seen the Lakers don't have enough to keep up with that kind of perimeter shooting. So I think it's a fascinating dynamic in this series, where if the Warriors make shots, it seems like they're going to win comfortably. If they struggle and AD's on, then the Lakers look like the better team. So once again, I picked the Warriors going into this series. I would say after the first 2 games, I'm sticking with that. But yeah, now there's a lot of pressure on Anthony Davis to get it done for the Lakers. Game 3 in this one will be Saturday night, I believe. So definitely want to see what happens there. The scene now switches to LA, which we know is going to be a good environment for the Lakers team. You figure the role players on the Lakers will play better at home, and maybe that will be enough, along with AD playing better, to reassert themselves from the game 1 mindset, where a lot of people looked at game 1 and thought the Lakers could upset the Warriors in this series. But like I said, I'm sticking with the Warriors. But game 3 will tell us a lot. Like I said, pivotal game 3s, that's why they're so important in these playoff series. Because usually you're looking at momentum shifting one way or the other in a game 3. All right, now so let's go to the East. So looking at the Heat and Knicks, series tied 1-1. This will be the first game Saturday night. Looking at this series, it's obvious to me that the biggest variable in this is going to be Jimmy Butler's health. Jimmy Butler was healthy game 1. The Heat win. He wasn't game 2. The Knicks won it. with this Heat team, the Heat will go as far as Jimmy Butler can take them because the other guys on that team are role players. And if Butler's not there, one of them's got to step up and be the guy. I don't know who on that squad could do that consistently for them to win a series against the Knicks team that's going to play tough physical brand of basketball game in and game out, which the Heat will do as well. But I just think without Jimmy Butler, the Knicks have more talent on their roster, even though Spoelstra is probably the better coach in this series. There's only so much he can do from the bench if he doesn't have the pieces to put on the court to get it done for him. So looking forward to game 3, you always have to look at it as, can Jimmy Butler play? If he does, what percentage will he be at? And if he can't play, who's going to step up for Miami? Remember, there's no Tyler Hero either, who would have been probably the first choice to step into that role. Now you're having to rely on some of the parts, Lowry, Adebayo, Kevin Love, Vincent, Strus, Martin. Not necessarily all household names, but this is what they have to work with. They got to make it work with the pieces they do have. For the Knicks, at this point, they're kind of in uncharted territory for this group. So each game is going to be an experience for them that they haven't, experienced before. So it's whether or not they can keep their composure, if they can be consistent enough to beat a Heat team that, even if they're wounded, will give everything they can game in and game out. So it's going to be all about execution and, I guess, maturity in the moment. So I believe I had the Knicks going through in this series. I think I had the Knicks in like 7. So I'm sticking with the Knicks. But, Butler's health will... Like, if Butler can't go the next couple of games, this is probably another series that might go 5 or 6, as opposed to, a Game 7 situation. But look, these are two teams that probably were not expected to be at this point. Most people thought the Heat were going to lose to the Bucks. A lot of people thought the Knicks were going to lose to the Cavs. So they're both playing with house money, which I think is what makes this series so entertaining. We'll see. We'll see Saturday night who can take control of this series and whether or not Jimmy Butler can play or not. So the final East series, got to look at my Celtics versus the Sixers. The Sixers got the improbable Game 1 win with no Joel Embiid. Harden went off for 45 plus points or something like that. Vintage, old school, prime Harden performance. Sixers were riding high. Joel Embiid wins MVP, comes back Game 2. They get blown out because Embiid looks uncomfortable with the knee brace and everything. James Harden reverts back to the Harden of a lot of his Philly stint, where he's clear-cut number 2, but he defers to Embiid a lot. Embiid wasn't right. So Harden wasn't right. Maxey tried to pick up the slack. I'll give Maxey a lot of credit, but Tucker, Harris, guys like that didn't step up. Melton, who was really good in Game 1, wasn't the same in Game 2. And the Celtics got it going from the perimeter. Mazzulla, he wants these guys to shoot threes. And in Game 2, they shot 51 of them. They made, 40%? It was like 20-something of them that they made. For this Celtics team, if they're on that consistent level, they are tough to beat no matter who you are on the other side. Especially, Embiid playing less than normal, and then that trickling down to the rest of the Sixers roster. So now, with the scene switching to Philly, we know the Celtics can win in Philly. We've seen it. We know the Celtics can beat Philly in a playoff series. We've seen that over the previous few years. Can Philly overcome that? Let's say Game 3 Celtics win, go up 2-1. Will Philly players start looking at it like, here we go again. We're about to be eliminated by the Celtics once again. Why do they keep doing this to us? That's where Doc Rivers has to come into play. Keep these guys focused. For Mazzulla, it's the same thing. He's going to look at Game 2 and be like, look, guys, you play like this, home and away, we're tough to beat. That's just facts. And that's with Jason Tatum only scoring 7 points, and they still beat the Sixers by, it was like 30, 35. So you expect Tatum to have a great game in Game 3. Jaylen Brown's been the best player for the Celtics so far in this series. I was, encouraged by Grant Williams knocking down some threes. Brogdon's been steady, but that's just Brogdon. That's what we come to expect from him. Derek White, I thought, struggled at times in Game 1. I thought he was better in Game 2. So here we are with a series tied 1-1 going into a Game 3 in Philadelphia. I had the Celtics winning this series. I still feel like they will. I had them in 6. I'm still sticking with that because there's a good chance we might get another split in Philly, go back to Boston in Game 5 in a 2-2 series, and then Boston kind of closed out 5 and 6. But, we'll see if Embiid can get comfortable with the knee brace, because at times he was falling over himself on the court because I guess the knee brace was getting in the way. I'm assuming if he played with it, it's necessary. So he's going to have to figure out how to get comfortable with it. It's not like it's something where if he struggles in Game 3, maybe he takes it off. I doubt he can do that with the knee. Was it LCL? So I'm assuming there's some instability with the knee. Obviously, that's what the knee brace is for. So we'll see. We will see what happens. But Embiid as the MVP, he's wanted it for years. Well, now he's going to have that MVP pressure on him to get this series figured out. If they lose in 5 games or something, the MVP will look like a waste. So Embiid's wanted this. He's got it now. And he's going up against a team that's, deeper than his Philly team. I think better coached, as much as Doc Rivers has been around and Mazzulla new to all this. It just seems like maybe that's some disrespect to Doc Rivers, because I don't think Doc Rivers is a terrible coach. I don't know, because a lot of Sixers fans want Doc gone, but if he was able to win this series, I'm sure some of that would quiet down. If they lose this series, he probably goes into the offseason on the hot seat. So can he get this Philly team to play for him as well as themselves? That would help out. But I still think the Celtics have the upper hand. And I was definitely encouraged by what I saw in Game 2. All right. So now, I got one more topic before I get out of here. I got to talk about Dillon Brooks, because he's been the talk for the past couple of days. He changed his character arc this season, wanting to be the villain, put it out there that he was the villain. Then they get to the playoffs, the backlash to being the villain, not just a villain, the villain. It's thrown in his face, and he completely ran from it. So now, I believe it was Shaq who said the other night, if Dillon Brooks, who's now a free agent because the Grizzlies have told him, we're not bringing you back under any circumstance. Like, that's strong words from your team. Then you know that we don't see you as part of the future in any way. So one, can his ego as the villain take that? And if not, then he's got to change his mentality, which I think Shaq brought up on TNT one night, which he's probably going to have to do anyway, because once you try to be the villain, and then you run and you like cower away from it, you can't come back as the villain the next season. You could be a villain because there's plenty of villains in the NBA. I think Draymond Green, Pat Beverly, maybe Marcus Smart, guys like that. Dillon Brooks can be one of those guys, but he can't be, once again, the bad guy. He's shown that he can't handle it. So Dillon Brooks has to do some soul searching, look himself in the mirror, and figure out who he wants to be. Obviously, work on the outside shot as well, because we saw enough of that in the Grizzlies-Lakers series, where the Lakers basically packed the paint, forced them to pass out to Dillon Brooks, who kept shooting 3 after 3, missing 3 after 3. So obviously his lot in the NBA is to be a 3-and-D guy. At least that's what he wants to be. The three-point shot isn't there, so maybe he becomes like a Tony Allen, who was once a Grizzly as well. Defensive player that's a slasher on offense. There is a spot on a few teams for guys like that. And that might be his only way to stay in the NBA and be a contributing member next season. If he's trying to come back to be the same player he was in Memphis, I don't know how many buyers he's going to have, at least on a long-term basis. I know the question says, will he find himself out of the NBA? I don't think he'll find himself out of the NBA necessarily. If he does, it'll be because of his ego not handling maybe a 1-year, 2-year deal. Because a lot of these teams aren't going to want to give him a long-term deal if they don't know if he's going to evolve from the player he's been so far. If he does, like I said, I think there's a couple of teams I could see him on as a bench guy, 7th, 8th guy in the rotation. I honestly think that's what he is right now. If he thinks he's a starter, then yeah, he probably finds himself waiting around for a long time. But I do think he'll be on a team next season. Would love to see who it is, but yeah, I don't think he's completely burned bridges in the NBA yet. We know Memphis is out of it. Some other teams that are probably young probably wouldn't give Dillon Brooks a look, because they would worry about his influence on those guys within the locker room, which once again is a byproduct of how you acted in Memphis and all the drama that was there this season. Not all on you, because Ja Morant brought some of that on himself. We know what happened with that story, but Dillon Brooks was a part of that. If you're a veteran team, those are one of the teams where Dillon Brooks catches on there. He's not going to be a starter. So if he wants to be a starter, that could be an issue. So I think that's probably the mentality change that's, Shaq is talking about. But I'm definitely interested to see where he ends up. Let me know what you think as well. Do you think Dillon Brooks is in the NBA next year? If you do, and you have a prediction on a team, you could throw that down in the comment section. I mean, for me, I'm trying to think of a team. Maybe a Toronto, because I think Toronto's going to be making a lot of changes. And maybe Dillon Brooks is a guy who they bring in to fill a role that they can't get from moving out some of the pieces that I think they're going to have to in this offseason. So I'll put it out there. I'll say Dillon Brooks, Toronto next year. So if you agree with that, you let me know. If not, let me know what team you think in the comment section. But yeah. Appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. If you did, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Also share it out. If you have already subscribed, share it out to other people. Kind of let them know what I'm about over here, because I think people will enjoy it. So yeah, definitely appreciate you who have subscribed so far. give a shout out to a couple of new subscribers that we do have. Was Johnny Valencia and I think it was like Kick It by Kate or something like that. Kick It with Katie. Yeah, welcome you guys to the channel, as well as those of you who joined before. Like I said, appreciate you all. We're slowly getting there. Rome wasn't built in a day, so I'm just each day looking to improve, and your feedback definitely helps with that. Your interactions in the comments lets me know that you like what I'm doing here. So always welcome that whenever you get the chance to. But as I leave you, I will say, be safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day. God bless. And I'll catch you on the next episode. All right. I'll see you later.